All
We're
right.
recording.
I'm recording.
Yes.
Jace, what
here
a
we are.
pleasure. What a pleasure to meet you. I've been following your work for the past couple of years, and I'm loving what you're doing with the Iwi. The first time that I heard you was with Antonio Sanchez Band, and I've been also following your work online through your own channels, through your own Instagram and Facebook, and the things you've been doing. And later on with Circuit Kisser.
Yep, of course.
Faking the moon landing.
Yes, we faked it. Circuit Kisser did, but I don't know if anyone else did. But
And wow, man, what sounds you're coming up with? Like, what type of concept you have behind it, and so much creativity, and so much originality. Funny enough, or maybe not, we share kind of the same setup, playing also the old school Iwi 1, Iwi 1000.
Okay.
And you know, the 4000 obviously I saw that you're playing also with the Prophet. So there's many things I'm curious to ask you about.
Sure.
And I would love you to share.
Well, and first of all, I have to say I admire your work also.
Thank you.
I generally consider you and Lucas to be significantly better programmers than me. You know, what I do, I have like a very limited set of what I do, and it's I've spent a lot of time with particular sounds and dialing them into a particular place because I have like a certain standard of what I want to have happen. But I honestly, in some respects, don't necessarily consider myself like an expert on the instrument. Most of the programming I've done has been on the Prophet. So that's the setup I've got today. I've got the Prophet 08 and then the 5000. But I honestly, I still technically live in New York, but I haven't been there in months. And I left my Iwi with Nathan Prilliman, who was just a friend of mine, and he's a great synthesist, composer. He's a classical composer. He teaches at Juilliard, teaches music technology there and stuff. And he plays some clarinet. So I left it with him to sort of, so he could kind of mess around with it, and which was great. He did that, but truthfully, I didn't miss it all that much because I basically used the Prophet, and then I have an Oberheim Matrix 1000, and I sort of ultimately decided I preferred the sounds on those. And with where I'm at in my life, playing so many different instruments these days that I just realized I don't have the bandwidth to dedicate to Iwi in like a really intense way like that. I'm going to be doing a decent amount of programming coming up, certainly on the Prophet and likely on the Oberheim also, because Circuit Kisser's doing a new record in April.
Cool.
So I've got to come up with some new stuff for that. But I ultimately decided that of the three, I preferred the Prophet and the Oberheim over the 1000. As beautiful as it is, I think the 1000 is an incredible instrument. I think the formant filters are super beautiful. That particular one that I had and was using had been modified with like a really great breath sensor. It was unbelievably responsive and natural feeling. And yeah, it was a beautiful instrument. But again, I'm just doing so many different things at this point that I kind of had to consolidate in a way. So
I see. Curious to know what brought you to the Iwi.
Sure. So basically, I had bought one in about 2008. This exact one, actually. From Matt Traum at Patchman, and had just used his sounds, the preloaded sounds on there and stuff. And I had at the time, I ran it through like a Fender Twin and stuff, and it was fun. It was very challenging. I mean, getting used to the rollers and everything, but it was just sort of this fun diversion I just wanted to mess with. I didn't necessarily take it too seriously, but I had got it. And then my college band director at the time at California State University, Long Beach, Jeff Jarvis was the director. And he wrote a piece for the band so I could play it with the band and stuff like that. So there were different things that kind of happened that kind of caused me to get it together a little bit. But I honestly didn't take it very seriously as an instrument, or wasn't very interested in it. And I'd play it every now and again, but it mostly sat in the case for about 10 years, actually. And then I joined Migration, or I began subbing in the band in 2017, Antonio Sanchez's band Migration. And I had mostly, honestly, wanted to get into using effects pedals on the saxophone. That was something I was interested in doing. I wanted to kind of get a good rig going on there. And Antonio, when he originally wrote me, he said he didn't know that I had an EWI or played it or anything, but Seamus had been playing it in the band, and he said, "Hey, Seamus has been doing this. Do you do like effects on the saxophone or something to just kind of get some of those things going on for some?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that," because I really I wanted to try that. And then there was one video of me playing EWI on the internet, and Antonio actually went and found it, and he's like, "Bro, I found you a video of you playing EWI." Like, I know how you do that, you know. So I was busted, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm down. I'll do it. You know." So, you know, it didn't go down exactly. He's like, "Man, do you still do this kind of thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do it," but kind of reluctantly, and it was difficult. Like, I hadn't played in so long. Like, so I started practicing, trying to get the octave rollers together. I was pretty nervous, you know, because I was like going to be in this super high level situation, and I didn't really know how to work the instrument and how to do it live and all this stuff. And you know, and there are so many different factors that you encounter when playing live. You know, like dealing with just getting the sound out of a speaker is like something very different than we're used to playing an acoustic wind instrument, like a saxophone or a clarinet or something. And you really have to kind of know what you're doing with that. So anyways, I did get it together. And then in the process of those 2 months or so of me preparing that music to go on that first tour, I was like, I actually kind of dig this, you know, like I can like play in my apartment in New York in the middle of the night. And then I also started realizing really quickly I was starting to sound better on the EWI than on the saxophone. And I realized, it's because I don't have a massive amount of back pressure and resistance I have to fight on this instrument. And I had moved my saxophone setup at that time in a direction of having a lot of resistance in different ways, which was netting out certain results, very desirable results.
Right.
But it was at a cost. And so then I started playing EWI, and I'm like, I actually sound like more fluid and am coming up with better ideas and all of this stuff. So it actually inspired me to reconfigure my entire saxophone setup over time. So now I have a very unresistant tenor setup because of playing EWI, actually. And so anyways, so that tour happened. Around that same time, I had been over to Matt Morantz's house, and I had talked to him about it, and he said he was selling a Prophet, and so I bought it from him. So the Prophet I use is Matt's old one, and you know, basically, when did I start programming for it? Can't remember if I messed with it right after that. Antonio asked me to join the band. Okay, so after that first tour, it was 2017, and I got back, and then I actually didn't practice EWI much for the next year, because I was working on writing music for a record I did called A Life Between, which is an acoustic saxophone record. So all my energy was basically going into that, and then when that ended, I finished recording in January. I needed another project. I started trying to learn to program for the EWI because I knew I was kind of in the loop subbing with Migration at that point, like it was going to keep coming up, and so I thought, okay, anyways, yeah, I took that year off, or I didn't play it a ton, wasn't working on programming while I was writing for A Life Between, recorded A Life Between in January 2018, and then needed another project, and then I started getting into it and taking it pretty seriously. And then I had a tour with Antonio that April, and I brought all of it on the tour, and he was like, "Oh, wow, like you really got into this." And so then he actually wrote it into the next set of music. So the record of his Lines in the Sand, I think originally was just going to be saxophone, maybe saxophone and effects and stuff. But because I had started getting into all of this, he actually wrote maybe over 50% of the music for the instrument. So there was like a pretty big shift. So 2018 was really the year I spent on this, and really trying to figure out how to program it. Almost gave up several times because it was just so difficult. Like it was going down the wrong angles on it, and as you know, it's almost like there's so few resources out there of how to actually program these things, and different synths vary in terms of how to, actually configure the breath and do it all properly and everything. So it was very difficult, but did eventually get it figured out, and was pretty happy with the results. And then around that same time, that fall, Dan Chemlinski, who's this band leader for Circuit Kisser, decided he wanted to integrate it into that, and then that became a whole other thing. And now that's mostly where I'm using it, So that's, I guess, the trajectory of what happened on the Iwi.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a story already. How does it feel to you playing Iwi as a saxophone player? Is it something different?
Oh, it's a totally different instrument.
Is it
Completely different instrument? Yeah. Yeah,
and do you think it kind of influences maybe your saxophone playing?
Oh, 100%. And like I was mentioning, I deliberately completely reconfigured my saxophone setup because of playing Iwi. Because I got to a point where I was programming the Iwi to feel resistant, because I had a saxophone setup that was inherently resistant. So I wanted the Iwi to be similar. I ended up developing this like TMJ problem in that summer of 2018 when I was working on it, because I misprogrammed it. I was forcing myself to work too hard to get the tones, and then also your body, you play an instrument like saxophone for 20 years or something, your body develops certain unconscious muscle movements designed to get certain effects out of the instrument that you don't even realize. So I was biting like too hard on the Iwi and all these different things. And that process made me realize how dysfunctional my saxophone technique was, essentially, in terms of this area. Okay.
I see.
So I completely changed mouthpieces. Before on saxophone, I had been playing pieces designed by a gentleman named Mark Yakubian, who was a physicist who lived in Southern California, and he worked on mouthpieces, and they were incredible, but very difficult to play. But in a sense of physics, like he was correct. Like the fundamental was unbelievably present. He could make a mouthpiece so that if you wanted a particular harmonic to pop out in a certain way, it would happen and everything. Like total genius, but they were very resistant. Okay. And so I decided I had to move away from that to where I am at now. And I went through a cycle of different refacers. I was playing a piece that James Bunty had worked on for about 3 years. And I'd say James was sort of in between Mark and where I am now. And then now what I play is Stefan Kammerer's stuff, because it's, in my opinion, it's the least resistant that I could find that still basically works with my aesthetic of how I feel the saxophone should sound. So that was that trajectory. Yeah. Cool. And then the Iwi, I had to go back over time and sort of design out, I had to remove resistance from the patches, which essentially basically meant making them sort of brighter so I could like not work as hard, or to have the lower threshold be a little bit raised, simple things like that. But just it does take a long time to shift those things, because it has to do with our sense of how the sound should be generated relative to our body. Correct. And because we're conditioned by playing these acoustic instruments, So yeah, Iwi, there was a process of deconditioning myself from that and accepting the efficiency of the Iwi. Right. And then reapplying or attempting to reapply that efficiency back to the saxophone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you play with the 4000, but at a certain point you do get the 1000.
Yeah, they play very similar to me. I don't.
Why did you choose to go and get this old school one?
Oh, why I chose to get the 1000? It was specifically for the formant filter, because on the Lines in the Sand tour with Antonio Sanchez Migration, he wrote in a part. There's a string solo on the record where there were actually string players playing it. And he wanted to do it live. And so I originally had a really hard time finding a sampler that could do that without massive latency. And so I decided I would get the 1000, because Niall Steiner and Akai had designed it with that formant filter, which does really nice violin emulations and things like that. And they don't necessarily sound like a violin per se, but they have a serious vibe, and it's really beautiful. And so that's where I went, and ultimately what I concluded was, I just switched to using a computer and used the Swam cello and stuff on that segment of the Lines in the Sand tour.
How would you compare VSTs, audio units, and analog gear?
I mean, there's no, it's apples and oranges. There's no comparison, right? Because like that Swam, those string instruments are unbelievable. I think they're fantastic, really.
Right.
The level of expression you can get out of it and tone quality and everything as far as different samplers like that. But I don't know on that. I mean, do you know about those things? Are there better options out there on the market?
Depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for like an emulator, 100% emulator, then Swam is a good one to look at. Yeah, definitely. If you're looking for something that feels like, but is not exactly that.
Yeah.
So let's say like physical moduling.
Yeah.
VL70M from Yamaha, that famous module they have.
Right.
I would go for an application called Respiro.
Okay.
You ever heard about Respiro?
No, I have not.
I'll send you a link later. It's
okay, cool.
Marvelous. It's the best sounding physical moduling app I ever played on, hands down. And regarding those plugins, there's a couple that I started using. I mean, I come from analog, and for me, analog was always like the thing, and it still in some ways is the thing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't. Yeah, the analog is an
there's something about
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, analog just feels that much more still for me. And I have, as I said, a similar setup to yours. I have the 1000, I have the 4000, I have the Matrix. I also play the Dave Smith Evolver, that blue box.
Yeah.
And also the Mofo, the yellow box.
Totally. For me, for synthesis, like actual synthesis, there's analog. There's no comparison. I don't know why I would really ever want to play a digital thing, other than the fact that you can get all these. There's certain things you could potentially do with it that you can't with an analog unit. But my thing has always been tone quality over everything. So therefore, I'm not going to
play the Prophet 8, right?
I play the Prophet 8, yeah.
So. Have we tried the 6?
Yes. Have you actually been able to get it to work?
Yeah, with translation. So I took Logic environment and made the CC basically. I made like a translation thing there to make it work with the aftertouch of the Prophet 6, and it sounds.
Sure. I know it's a better sounding instrument.
Better. Yeah.
I know it is. Yeah, this is the one that I had, and this is the one I know, so it's basically what I use at this point, and I'm roughly satisfied with it. Obviously I wish there was a little bit more meat on the oscillators and stuff. It can sometimes sound a little like what it is. But that being said, we did the whole Circuit Kisser record, and it was kind of a topic Dan and I had discussed, because it was like, okay, the 08, like, we've got you. And the thing is, it has a kind of a different vibe than almost everything else we used on that record. We basically had VCOs, and this is like one of the only DCO synthesizers, and it's nice because it's the lead instrument, and it does kind of cause it to cut a little bit more. There is something like a little bit different. So I don't know. It is what it is. I'd rather they were VCOs, but it is what it is at this point for me.
I hear you. By the way, if you're looking for a nice analog plugin, and there's a new one called the EV-Einer.
Okay.
It's an emulation plugin of the original EVI Kumar from the 70s, the EVI from Steiner.
Yeah.
And it's made by a gentleman named Davidson Carpenter from actually not so far away from where you are, I guess. And I think he's also in the same. Well, he's not. Yeah, he's in
Colorado or something.
Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah. Get it. You'll have a good time.
Can you send me the links to all this?
I'll send you definitely. I'll send you an email with some links. You can definitely check it out.
Great.
Surprised me very much as an analog player, because regardless of the tone quality and the possibilities you can get with all these type of filters, which by now we all be using, like you mentioned, like the Formant, and there's like a wave shaper, and there's many things there. But it's the dynamical range of that plugin is incredible. It really plays from nothing, from zero. So if you're into like playing really soft, and you want to still be dynamic, and you really want to create a sound from zero, that's the one you want to play. Respiro, by the way, the same.
Okay.
I had bad experience with plugins that always start from from a 0 to
20
120 to 20 or 30 or exactly. So this one really starts from nothing, and it sounds pretty close to the real thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And if you're also into like rotating chords, that
Yeah.
famous Brecker
Yeah.
type of things that he did.
Yeah.
There's another great plugin you can get, which I'm using also with the EViner. It's a different app, but it's a very visual and very friendly type of application for MIDI rotation. It's called the MIDI Harmonizer. I'll send it over to you. You can check it out.
Okay,
and
great.
It sounds really cool. I must say, it's for a computer setup. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, that's
not bad at all.
That's good. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll look forward to.
I'll send it over. So when you have some time, you can noodle around and geek around with all this information.
Yeah.
But so what's the next Circuit Kisser? You mentioned that you're coming up with a new album, right?
Yes, that I'm not writing for it. That's Dan Chmielewski's band. I play in that band. I mean, maybe I'll write for it at some point. I think he's got all the material for this new record, though, kind of together already. Mm-hmm. So we'll be recording that towards the end of April. And actually, we have a single coming out called Electrical Fire.
Cool.
Yeah, and that'll be out maybe in 2 weeks, actually, 3 weeks, something like that. We're almost done. I think he's mixing it this weekend or something like that.
And I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Yeah. I thought the performances were fantastic. I'm a perfectionist with sound, and I had like my interface that I use is a Prism Morpheus, but it's like a really high end British interface, and it was down at the time, so I needed like a stopgap solution, and so I literally used like $100 like Motu thing and stuff, which is probably no one would even know listening to it. Most people won't even know, but that being said, I'm really proud of the performance. I'm really proud of the performance. So that'll be fun. So. And the tune is super cool. The tune Dan wrote for it is.
I'll keep my radar open to listen to this. Once again, just that tone quality that you got from. I'm not sure. I guess the Prophet when you recorded that album, "Faking the Moon Landing."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's almost all the Prophet. One of the tracks is something on the Akai, but.
Special, very special, and very, very, not something that I heard before, and that struck me as the sort of like, wow, man, that's some great sound, man, from that Prophet you're getting there, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And,
it took a long time, a long torturous time. The thing is, I'm not a I don't like technology. I like playing acoustic instruments. I like avoiding technology. So it's actually really random or bizarre in a way that I actually kind of got into this, and I wouldn't have had the migration opportunity not come up for me, and then by getting into it, it opened up this whole thing. And I did get really into it, in the time, especially in 2018 when I was spending a lot of time working on it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not. I generally don't like computers and things, and like my computer's a mess. Like I haven't figured out how to sync my iCloud, and it's been like 2 years or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like that, which is not normal for, I think, most people that do like what we do on this instrument.
Right. But, no, I understand. You can really actually find yourself diving into it, and then like losing like the track of time, and just like getting obsessed about it. And then it's like I have to kind of remind myself that I'm still playing. I need to play.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, and some nights. I mean, I'd get home from a gig at midnight and start programming and end at 6 a.m. and stuff. Whoa. And not make that much progress. Like end up undoing these things later. Because what I'll do is I'll save different versions of it, and then record it, and then listen back to a demo of the recording 3 days later and see if I actually like the way it sounds and all of these things, So, yeah.
Interesting configuration. Because you mentioned the Fender Twin.
Which I don't do now, by the way. I wouldn't run an EWI through an amp because there's no point. But back in the day, it was fun.
I did actually. I had a nice experience with a guitar amp.
Okay.
Only through a wah-wah pedal.
Okay.
So I really went for it. We're going now guitar mode, okay?
Yeah, yes.
And
if you go guitar mode, it's cool.
Yeah,
you know,
it works.
Get a tube amp and drive the tubes and But you progressively limit the amount of variation you can have in the sound, right? Like the beauty of a synthesizer is that you can get all these really detailed, unique sounds.
Correct.
An amp is the sound. You know, you run your EWI through a distortion pedal and then an amp. Yeah, it's just that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know. So.
But I must say that for me, even as an envelope filter, basically using a wah-wah pedal, just with the Patchman sounds, you know, just that standard bang that we all have, and just a wah-wah pedal and a DI, like a direct out, line out, works really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, just have a bit of like a motion, type of motion in your sound.
Sure.
That's
I can
cool.
dig it. No, it definitely has a vibe. It definitely has a vibe.
Yeah.
You know, I just as now I guess I'm an EWI purist or something, and now it's like, okay, I really will only want to send my sound through like a powered speaker, you know.
Yeah.
So I can actually hear the stuff. But,
yeah, man. Wow, cool. So many interesting stories and details.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, man. And what about your own projects, your solo albums? Is there something?
Not necessarily at the moment. I feel sort of emotionally split between many interests at this point, and I'm not sure what's going to really take hold. Mm-hmm. You know, I spent almost all of last year learning to play guitar. Which I don't play well still. That's really hard, you know, trying to learn an entire different thing like that. But I have ambitions in that area now of things I'd like to do, you know. And then recently I've started practicing saxophone and flute and clarinet again for a variety of reasons. And then that kind of became interesting to me because I'm like, shit, like I actually am not a bad clarinet player. Like if I actually just practice this really seriously for like 6 months, I could be like really world class. So, you know, part of me is kind of interested in those things. And then, you know, I also do want to sing at some point, and that'd be probably part of the guitar thing that I do and stuff.
Like a singer-songwriter project.
Yeah, but singer-songwriter, but with like really cool chords and like marginally shredding solos. So like very jazz, and it's like Radiohead meets jazz meets like John Mayer or something.
Can you say that again? That was a great sentence.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, the basic gist though is like it's like I really do like people like John Mayer. Not everything that he does, but like this decent amount of it. I really like Alan Holdsworth, and like I really like all this work that I've done in jazz and everything. And it's like I'm kind of interested, and Radiohead. I really like that. All, you know.
Right.
But I don't like everything that anyone does. You know, I really don't. And so I don't know. I just sort of feel like there's more potential for originality in that area.
Cool.
For me. Not for any given person, but for me. And it's because I grew up playing jazz saxophone, really liking certain artists like Michael Brecker and Chris Potter and these different people, transcribing a lot of that, ultimately basically kind of sounding like that, and then spending a really long time being stressed about trying to not sound like that, but basically never succeeding because it's just like too ingrained in me. So therefore, it's almost like I wonder if I could go to some completely different place where I'm basically ignorant, but I have all this wealth of information still kind of in my unconscious that could seep into that area. Could be very interesting, you know, and that's, I really like not knowing what I'm doing. You know,
I can understand that, definitely.
Yeah, it's much more satisfying to not know what I'm doing. I'd rather play a solo that at the end of it I said I have no idea what the hell I just played, you know, but it sounded awesome in the context of everything. And I don't even maybe know what anyone else played, but it sounded awesome. And that magic to me is much more interesting than like having intellectual control of the instruments and music that I play.
Do you consider yourself more in the intuitive player than actually a non-intuitive player?
It's both. It's both. I'm frustrated because it's like as an artist, I'm happiest in an intuitive space, but as a human being, I default towards analysis. Okay. Wow. So like as a human, like Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTP, right? So like I am intuitive, but I very much default towards analysis and thinking, mathematics, things like this. So and the way I approach music can be very mathematical in certain ways. So that's why it's such a joy to me when I can completely let go of that and actually access this alternate side of my personality that's kind of been undernourished in my whole life, My goal really in life is to get to a point where I don't have to work on anything technical. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm just going to go paint today. Literally or figuratively. You just go, it really would become all about composition and improvisation. And I still feel like I've got technical things I've got to work out, but yeah, ultimately I'm much more interested in basically having sort of a very intuitive, creative experience in my day-to-day life.
I'm a very intuitive musician.
Yeah.
I don't know 95% of the stuff that I play.
That's beautiful.
I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I know what a C7 chord and what a major 7 is, but to be honest, if you're gonna ask me about all these analysis
complex
of solos and stuff,
stuff,
I'll be like, man, I can try, but it took a lot of time to figure it out. It's like if you play me something, I was like, okay, now I get it. Just play it.
Do you have exceptionally good ears, like your ability?
I'm perfect pitch, but in B flat.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
See, my ears are very weak. It's something I've had to work very hard at. It's definitely my biggest deficit as a musician. But my mathematical sense is very, very strong. So then I'll end up relying on that, which then in turn weakens the ears and the intuition and things like that. So, yeah, it's a real balancing act. Yeah.
Well, you can never have. What should you have? A bit more of that, a bit more of that. I don't know.
We are what we are. We are what we are, right? And it's like someone told me the story of Jerry Garcia, I guess. He had been in a coma or something like this. He was the Grateful Dead guy.
Oh, yeah.
And he came out of the coma and he said, well, I can't remember what it was, but something like, well, I'm not Beethoven, but whatever. Let's just do it. Let's get to it. You know what I mean? But it's like everyone kind of has their demons, and it's like, or whatever, or deficiencies or whatever. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, are you satisfied or not? Do you enjoy doing what you do?
How about writing?
I haven't been writing lately. No.
Do you find it difficult?
I find it very difficult, but the absolute most satisfying thing I do when I do it. Yeah, but very, very difficult because I refuse to write something that I don't feel emotionally connected to, which means therefore I have to dig into a certain place of discomfort. Because when you're writing from a place of emotional connectivity, it has to do with what you're trying to bring about in your life emotionally, what you're trying to bring about next. What are the emotions you're dealing with right now, and how do you transmute those things into your future self, right? And so therefore it's a pretty painful process when you really get in there, but then exhilarating when you find the moments where it breaks out, so it's challenging, but yeah, and ultimately I do want to be living much more in that space, and that's my goal.
I'll be watching out. I'll be looking forward. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I hope to meet you in person sometime and to hear you play in person and hear. Where are you? You're in the Netherlands?
I'm in the Netherlands.
Okay, great. Are you from there originally?
No, I'm from Israel.
Okay, where in Israel?
South Israel.
Okay.
Small town, not so famous, but
okay, cool.
Not so far away from Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, like 1 hour.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very interested in coming to live in Europe in the next few years, so perhaps we'll be over in that neck of the woods and we can connect in person sometime.
I would love to. It will be my pleasure.
Yeah. All right, Itai.
Thank you very much, Chase.
Really, really fun.